Welcome back to the Booktroverts podcast. I'm McKayla.
I'm Meg.
And in today's episode, we are deep diving Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. I think that's how you say her name. This is the second book in the Crimson Moth duology. And we had read the first one, Heartless Hunter, last year before we started the podcast. So we don't have an episode on that, but we had been looking forward to reading the second one once we finished that, and it is finally here. It just came out February 18th, I believe was the date. So new release. We're excited and we're going to jump in. And just a little content warning, this will include spoilers for the whole book. It will also include spoilers, obviously, for Heartless Hunter, since this is the sequel. So if you have not read the first one and you've not read the second one, I would suggest pausing and coming back to this episode once you have done that. With that being said, I think we can jump in and we will start with our ratings. So Meg, what did you rate it?
All right. So I wrote down a 3.5, but I keep going back between a 3.5 and a 3.25, and I know that's very specific, so forgive me, but it's just the two together, I think, make it a 3.5 overall series. It's good. It's, we get into a little bit of fantasy, but more on the romance side than anything. But this one by itself, I kept going back and forth. And every single day after I finished it, my idea has changed on what the rating should be. And I don't know if I'm just on my own here. So I will leave it at that and see what you have as well.
Well, it's funny because I wrote 3.5, but I'm going back and forth like, is it a 3.5 or is it a 3.75?
Oh,
So
okay.
I actually was leaning a little higher than you. And I can't remember what I gave the first one. I probably think I gave it like a 3.5.
I think we did 3.5. Yeah, because I checked my notes.
And I am actually leaning towards, I think I like this one more than the first one. And I'm like leaning towards wanting to rate it a little higher because it felt more of a romance book to me than a fantasy book.
100%.
And that's like my go-to genre. So I think that's why I was like, oh, I loved it, and had a lot of romance tropes that I enjoy. But yeah, I was going back and forth, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go with the lower one because if I really felt like it should be rated higher, I probably would have gone. That would have been my like first reaction. So I think I'm going to stick with the 3.5. So we're right on the same path. But yeah, it's funny that like I was leaning a little like, oh, should I put it higher? And you were like, oh, should I put it lower?
I know, because it's nothing against the book, because I do actually like it more than the first one, because the first one you just get so much more context of the characters and all of that, and this one really just gets into the meat and the bones, what is going to happen and all that fun stuff, and kind of the finale, all that jazz. But for me, the only reason why it kept going down a little bit was just there was so much back and forth, and at one point I go, okay, I think we get it, but I know that they need to get through this to understand their dynamic, and obviously with it being more on the romance side, they needed to get through their stuff to figure out that they wanted to be together. But it just was a little too much for me at times. But if we'd gotten rid of, I don't know, 2 of the back and forth occurrences, I would have been fine with it being higher. It's just at one point I go, oh my God, can you just stop doing this and have some communication, please? Because I think you are like me, the miscommunication trope stuff is just not cool. So there were just times that it was miscommunication that was driving me freaking nuts. I go, oh my God, you can't talk to each other? Like, please just get through this.
Yeah, I had the exact same notes.
Yeah.
I just felt like, yeah, we've definitely talked about it on episodes. It's my least favorite trope in a book.
Yeah.
I understand like small instances of it, but when it is so reoccurring throughout the whole book, it's so infuriating as a reader, where it's just like, can you just talk to each other? Can you just stop making assumptions? Because like I hate that shit in real life. I hate it in books too. And yeah, it was throughout the whole thing. And as we go through like the events of the actual book, there's certain ones that just were so unnecessary to the plot. It just felt like was like, oh, let me just throw another one in. And I was like, this did nothing for the freaking story.
Yeah.
And it pissed me off.
That's I think where I'm at, pretty much why I was leaning more towards the 3.25
Yeah.
for it.
I was sad because I remember reading the first one and we were all like talking about it at book club, and I was like, I really feel like the second one could be a 5-star, because when the first one came out, it was all over TikTok. People 5-star read, oh my God. And we were like a little let down. It wasn't. But I was like, I think the second one really has a good setup. And again, let down in that sense. It definitely was not a 4 or 5-star at all for me. So yeah, that was a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, there were just certain things I think, and I'm not, I think we've said it literally anytime we talk about books. They are authors. We are not, we'll never create a book. So I'm talking as just my own 2 cents. But there were just certain pieces that I think could have just been removed or changed entirely, and it would have been so much better. So there
Yeah.
was just some stuff, and there were a couple things that I don't think we got answers on at all. It was just thrown in there, and I said, okay, what happened to this piece? Because I wrote it down as a very important thing, and then nothing. So that's where I was getting a little frustrated at times. But it was a little sad, like you said, that it wasn't as good
Yeah.
as it could have been. Because the first one, I mean, granted, it's been, I think, almost 11 months since we read it because I checked my Goodreads to see. And the fact that I still remember certain things was, oh, this
Yeah.
is going to be so good. And then it just kind of
Hmm.
let it down.
Yeah. I will say it kind of reminded me of the I forget what was the name of like the duology was called, but Divine Rivals and Ruthless
Yes.
Vows.
Mm-hmm.
It reminded me of like that genre of fantasy where it's a little cozier. Yes, it's fantasy because it has like magical elements,
Yeah.
but it definitely leans like I wouldn't even call it romantasy. Like it is romance with a fantasy subplot. That's what it feels like to me. And I felt like this felt similar to those where I could see how this could be a 5-star read for someone, but for me they're just like their average rating, but I enjoyed them. They were an enjoyable read. They're an
Yeah.
easy read. They're not the greatest fantasy or romantasy book I've ever read, but I would recommend them to people and I enjoyed my time reading them.
Yeah. Yeah. I literally, I had text mom about it and said, oh, if you're looking for one that's not super high fantasy and you're just looking for something that has a little more of the fantasy realm, this is pretty cool, but it's totally leaning more on the romance side. So if you're not into that, I wouldn't go for it. You know what I mean? Because some that we've read that are high fantasy that have a little side of romance, that's more of people's flavor. And this one definitely was the vice
Yeah.
versa. So,
Yeah, and this one loses a few points because it was not on Kindle Unlimited when the first one was. So
I know.
just throwing that out there.
Yeah. That was a little sad because I go,
It
okay,
was
now I actually have
$12.
to, yeah, I have to pay for this.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you did. It's okay
Yeah.
though.
It's fine.
Okay, so the book was broken up into 3 parts.
Yeah.
So Meg is going to give us like a little summary of each part. Well, we'll go like part by part, but she'll give a little summary and then we'll talk about that and then we'll move through. So that's going to be the format of the episode.
Yeah.
And then
So,
any remaining comments we have.
yeah, because I think we're going to have some throughout the thing. Because each part had a different piece that I had a question or comment on. And then I tried to
Yeah.
put it in the overall. And I said, if we get to it, we'll get to it. You know what I mean? It's whatever. All right. So I guess we'll just jump in. So part one literally starts only a couple weeks after the second one ends. So it's really nice that you kind of jump back in. And that's, where we start off. We are in Umbria, where they were, when I say they, it was Cressida and Rune were sailing off to Umbria basically to flee the New Republic and build an army, pretty much. So that's kind of where we start off. We immediately find out that Rune is engaged to Prince Sorin. I think that's how you say his name. And he is basically going to build said army for Cressida. There's a couple other details that happen in this part, but we're pretty much there as the setting. And then we slowly move back to the New Republic as we go forward and find out more information.
My first comment right off the bat was I was very shocked of where the book opened because I couldn't tell like what the time frame was. So that is helpful that you like, oh, it's just a couple weeks after. I was very shocked to find Rune, like we're meeting her and she's already engaged to the prince and there's like this whole contract and deal being made. And I don't know, it just felt so random because the end of the first book, she's getting engaged to Alex. Obviously he dies.
Yeah.
And then she kind of was in love with Gideon in the first book. And I'm like, you moved on pretty quick here. Now, obviously, we find out that she really doesn't want to marry the prince and she really doesn't like him. But I was so confused that, like, oh, this is just what you're going to do because I also felt like it was kind of unclear of like what her motive was in the sense like obviously I know like she was doing it because this was the way to get Cressida in power so that the witches would be safe in the New Republic. They wouldn't, because they were capturing witches and killing them. So she was trying to save the witches, but I'm like, are you going to have a role in this new world? Are you going to be part of Cressida's council? Are you going to be like in this government, or is your deal like, yeah, you're just going to marry this prince and you're going to be the prince's wife, but you saved the witches? I couldn't figure out what she was getting out of it.
Yeah, and I was trying to figure out if was it something that we did not reread this book before, this first book before we went to the second one. So I was trying to figure out, was it something that I missed that I just could not remember? But I don't think there was anything. She didn't know about Cressida until literally at the end
At
when
the
she found
end,
out her friend Verity was literally not Verity. It was just all a
like
concealing
an illusion,
an
yeah.
illusion. Yeah, exactly. So I'm with you. I had no idea what the end goal of this was. I assumed she was just doing it as all right, I'm going to build this union with the witches and an area who does not hate witches. They have no problem with witches. It kind of just seemed like her value would have been done at that point. You know what I mean? And it just kind of was, I said, okay, where are we
Yeah.
going with this?
And I get it from the sense of wanting to save all the witches and
Yeah.
give them a place. And obviously, I think she wanted to go back and be able to live at her house, because we see like later throughout the book, she is asking, is Wintersea still there? She wants to live in that house because that's where she lived with her grandma and all this stuff. So I don't know if she was trying to like have split residency in two different countries,
Yeah.
whatever, but it just seemed like she really wasn't getting anything out of this deal. Cressida was going to get her armies because of this marriage. And then Cressida was going to take the throne and she was going to have control.
Right.
And Rune was just going to live a life unhappy with a man she didn't want to be with.
Yeah. And there was a lot, I mean, it goes through the rest of the book, but there's a lot of mentioning of, you know, chaining down the person. The Crimson Moth is supposed to be free, and she's all about, you know, rescuing people, helping everyone out, and doesn't like to just be in one place sitting down and doing nothing. So the fact that we jumped in and she was going to be in that position, it something had to have happened to understand. And my only guess was just the fear of Cressida is what put her in that position and said, okay, I'll just go along with it because I'm not getting hunted right now. At
Mm-hmm.
least I'm safe over here and have someone who can protect me, because he would have his own army. He
Yeah.
is a prince, all that jazz. But yeah, I mean, once we find out more, obviously it started to pick up. I said, okay, this is what's happening. At least we get it. But yeah, it was a little bit shocking at first, the first couple chapters, to just sit there and say, okay, where are we going? I need
Yeah.
to know
It
more.
just seemed, it seemed so unlike her character, not in the sense like
Yeah.
obviously in the first book, her main goal was to save the witches that were being captured. So that made sense, saving it for the witches. But yeah, she was very much a free spirit, and she wasn't just going to go with people. Just like she was fine taking the more risky option in book one, and I felt like this
Yeah.
was her kind of just like settling and trying to be the martyr almost, like, oh, I guess I'll just do this and I'll hate my life. I don't know, it was just that part was a little jarring, but I will say it was nice that I didn't feel like we needed a reread of book one. I understood exactly what was going on. There's not a ton of characters that you need to remember anyways, and anything that needed to kind of be refreshed, I felt like the author did it in a really natural way in the story, like the reminder of like, oh yeah, she was engaged to Alex and he passed away because he jumped in front of the bullet. She reminded you without making it too obvious. She was reminding you.
Literally my first comment, because I was sitting down, I said to Patrick, I go, you would not know that I did not read this in a year, because there wasn't any, oh my God, there's so many details that I'm completely missing. And to your point, the author did a wonderful job at explaining it. There was only one piece, and it's not really any spoiler, but it was why Seraphine was saved. I go, why was she saved again? I could not remember. But then we find
Mm.
out, obviously, that Rune's grandmother told her to go find her and save her. She'll tell you everything that she couldn't, and all of that. And I said, okay, everything was answered. All my questions that I had at the beginning of why was this person, who was this again, it was easily answered, and it just flowed nicely. So it wasn't as if a let's give you one paragraph of the beginning summary of what happened. It wasn't, you know what I mean? It wasn't choppy. So it was pretty good. So at least if anyone else is reading it with some time in between, it won't feel as shocking as if other series that we've read.
Yeah, I agree with exactly what you said. Like it was nice to feel like, okay, I wasn't regretting not doing a reread.
Yeah.
I like when you can kind of just pick right up. I will say also in this first part, I did really enjoy that we immediately got the enemies to lovers trope and vibe between Rune and Gideon when
Yeah.
he shows up and he's trying to kill her. And then he traps her in the bathroom. And it's just so, like, this is where I guess I could put it under miscommunication, but just like, I don't know. Overall, like the characters kind of being dumb throughout the book. Because,
Yeah.
first of all, he's one of the head captains of this army. So he's a very intelligent person. And she was going around evading all these people, saving all these witches. She has to be smart to do that. And they acted like they had two brain cells between the two of them, certain things. And later in the book, it becomes obvious too with literal events that are happening. I'm like, how did you not think that through? But this is the first case of it where he's unwilling to realize that he actually has feelings for her. And that's
Yeah.
mainly probably just being in denial. But I'm like, you literally let her go.
Yeah. You
Like
it
you were sent there to kill her and you couldn't follow through because he hesitates.
mhm. Yeah. There was so much. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the enemies to lover aspect because it was just so good. It's one of my favorites just because it's
Yeah,
so
same.
entertaining. The hate and then all that fun stuff. But yeah, it was just, to your point, the two brain cells. It was just every single encounter was just, if you took a step back, you could have figured this out pretty quickly between the two of you. Don't get me wrong. I know that there was betrayal and hurt on both sides because obviously Rune, hides the fact that she's a witch. Gideon obviously, puts her into custody and all of that. So I can get that probably brings a little bit of, anger towards each other, but there was just a lot of, oh my God, you obviously love the other person, because the whole first book was, I shouldn't like you because I feel like there's something there, but I do. And then this one was just I'm going to hide all my feelings and be mad
Yeah,
about it the entire time.
I agree. But I liked it because I didn't know how far into the book we would see him. So it was nice
Yeah.
that it was very early on and we're immediately getting that back and forth with them, that tension, and that scene between the two of them is really when we get that first insight into like her not wanting to be with this prince.
Yeah.
She's having like a full blown panic attack in the bathroom.
I mean, understandable. You're going with something just because, the head of the witches wants to bring back her the reign of all the craziness and everything. Of course you're not going to want to go forward with it because, again, she's not going to be one that just sits back and lets other people do things. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty obvious from book one. The other part of info that we get in the beginning was the fact that there's a missing Roseblood heir. So there's a fourth person in the family of, whether it was I think they said it was a sister. I couldn't remember what
Yeah.
they said. But in Cressida's family. So that was interesting because no one could find this person. I said, I don't know if this was supposed to be a new thing that we find out in book two once we get, I don't want to say rebirth of Cressida, but she's back. And then we start finding out more information. So I was just, oh, okay, so this is going to be the problem for book two. I like this because in the end we know it's going to be a fight between the two groups, but
Yeah.
that was an interesting detail that she threw in the book, and I liked it. So
And was it in part one or part two where we find out like what her plan is
I
for this
want to
heir?
say in I think it's part one that we find out that she wants to get the heir, and then I think in part two we find out specifically why she wants the heir for that reason.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
because they kind of blended together on that one, to be honest, in my mind, of what details were happening for that storyline. The other thing that we had talked about, the fact that there was the enemies to lovers, and now Gideon is going there to obviously kill Rune, but they end up coming to a truce, at least a little bit, so that they can get back into the New Republic, and she can find the Sibyl that can basically find the heir, because they can look across the world and see where someone is. So Rune wants to get to the Sibyl. Gideon wants to use Rune as a bargaining chip to take down Cressida, and then they end up on the ship, the Arcadia. So they have to pretend they're married and all of that stuff. That kind of happened towards the end of part one.
Okay. I couldn't remember if that was part two or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
the
that's like when
beginning.
he
Yeah.
he breaks into like the dress shop and
Yeah.
yeah, they go
Yep.
on. I liked the part where they got on the boat, mainly because it was just giving me cruise ship, sweet life on deck
Yeah.
vibes, just speaking to my cruiser heart.
Yeah.
Of course, one cabin,
And one
one
bed.
tiny cabin, one bed. Nothing happens though.
No.
even though it was set up perfectly. I did, though, feel in this part it was really obvious that William was the spy.
Okay. I'm gonna sound bad, but yeah, it was one of those that it was a is Abby the one that is gonna betray, Gideon, and she was under this ruse basically of I'm working here and whatever. But yeah, you could totally tell it was William because he really just wanted to get Rune away from Gideon, and he's not gonna notice you're gone, all of this stuff. Again, another thing, I understand that Gideon's trying to find details from Abby on who the spy is, but oh my god, you're just avoiding your supposed to be wife completely. Everyone's gonna see that, especially someone who tried to talk to her multiple times on her own. Come on, man.
Yeah. And because we find out that before the dress shop, Gideon had been sent back to the New Republic, and he basically gets ripped a new asshole. Like,
Yeah.
you're clearly a witch sympathizer. We can't trust you. He's very much disgraced in the army there. So he's trying to prove himself and, like,
Yeah.
win back his rank, essentially. So then he's like, no, I'm going to go get her. I'm going to do it this time. I swear this is it. And then that's when they find out, like, we're going to send someone else to do the job. So then he realizes that there's a spy on the boat with her. And yeah, I just like, again, he's a high ranking captain in this army. He seems to be a very integral person
Yeah.
in the army for the New Republic. And I'm just like, the fact that the William thing didn't even cross his mind,
Yeah.
right? That was his name, or was it Ash?
No, it was William. Ash was
William.
just an extra that was
The
there.
extra person. Okay. Because, like, she goes to dinner by herself. She has to lie and be like, oh yeah, my husband's sick. Again, you, like, really couldn't have just committed to the part. Like you said,
Right.
people are going to notice that you guys aren't actually spending time together.
Yeah.
And then Gideon walks in and Amelia is like, oh, he's just trying to hook up with you. And that's like the recurring thing in here is, like, he is so focused and he thinks everything she does is to manipulate men around her. Obviously, he's jealous.
Yeah.
But did you not for 3 seconds think, or maybe this guy is the spy and he's trying to have dinner alone with her to get her alone, to get her to trust him so she leaves with him? This is what I
Yeah.
mean. 2 brain cells couldn't rub them
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
He's just like, no, he clearly wants to. And then it's like, okay, then you see him later when you go to play the cards
Yeah.
with Abby. You see him talking to her, and it's still just like, oh, he wants to hook up with her. And he's thinking maybe Abby is the spy. So he's like, I'm going to go get some in. But Abby's doing nothing to interact with her.
None.
I just felt like it was so freaking obvious, and he could not see it.
And it's also as tough because it's not as if this journey on this ship was going to be a week or 2 weeks. It was 3 days.
Yeah.
So there was not enough time for it to say, okay, Abby is slowly starting to warm up to me again to get to Rune. That was not happening. It was she works here. She's doing her own thing with her crew. That's it. William is the only person who was trying to make an effort at trying to talk to Rune, which, ding, 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 should have been a sign that something was going on. And the fact that there's a spy. You've been told that there's someone coming in to get to her. Not to you, but to her.
Yep. No one else went up to her on the boat.
None.
It's just like, and also,
Yeah.
why didn't he tell her, hey, there's another spy in the boat? Because if the spy got to her, that fucks him.
Yeah.
So why just not fill her in and be like, I'm just going to try and figure out who the spy is? And then he could still have done his little side plot where he's like, I'm actually going to fill the spy in on, like, what I'm doing, get them on my side. But
Right.
again, miscommunication. Just tell her.
There was so many parts that they didn't want to tell each other things because they didn't trust each other. But it was to the point where, oh my gosh, if you literally just spoke about this for a few minutes, you'd be fine. And then you could still do your manipulation behind the scenes, keep certain details. You can, you didn't lie, but you held some of the information to the side. That could have been the case. But this one, it just seemed as if they wanted to hold everything true to their heart and not tell anyone else and say, okay, well, I'm just doing this because you hurt me in this way. And I'm just going to hold it against you for the rest of life.
Yeah. I also like the Abby thing. I mean, I got it because they needed to make Rune jealous, to make her
Yeah.
want to go. I got it for the plot, but it felt so unnecessary to me. Also, then when she just like Abby tries to go and hook up with Gideon. It's like, you see him here with a wife.
Yeah.
Like, I think we could have done that a little better. And then when she pops up at the end of the book, it's like, oh, we're just pals.
It was so weird. The whole people who were really against each other coming back in as if nothing happened. I understand that people get through differences and they might become acquaintances, friends, whatever that stuff is. That happens in real life all the time or in other books too. But this one just felt very, I'm going to need these allies down the line for the rest of the story, but I don't want to bring them in multiple times. I'm just going to bring them in at the beginning or when they're introduced again.
And have them
And
pop
then they
back up.
come with it. Yeah, exactly.
No, I completely agree. And like, oh, Abby happened to be, this was her last week on the boat and all this stuff. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is like too much for me.
Yeah.
Also, this book specifically, I don't mind if a plot or a twist is a little predictable,
Yeah.
as long as there's like a few that you're like, wow, this one, I mean, every single one, I was like, I could have written this, in the sense of like when William takes her down to the boiler.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, one, why did you continue to go down there knowing that you have markings on your leg that if they smudge, you're screwed?
Right.
And she even says that, like, I can't be down here longer. I can't be down here longer. Continues to stay down there. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we got foreshadowing. She's looking for storage containers. Of course, there's one down there, and he wants to show it to her. Like, I'm like, first of all, who's taking you? If you zoom out, like out of the story, the whole thing makes no sense. Why would he
Yeah.
be taking her down to the boilers on a ship? And why would he be showing her these like vessel areas? I mean, she kind of played it off like, oh, my grandma owned these ship like boats. So I'm really interested in it. I'm like,
Yeah.
wouldn't you take her to, I don't know, the control room where the captain sits? It made no sense. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, they're telling us that the things are down here because she's going to come. And like, this one is the only one that doesn't get locked with a hatch. Clearly something's going to go on in here.
Yeah.
And it just like, it felt so predictable.
I'm
He's the
with
one
you.
who's showing, like, especially that part. I was like, oh, he's definitely the spy. He's showing her where he's going to capture her.
Yeah. The other part, not to do with this, but another part that was you could kind of pick up on pretty easily is as they started going back and forth, with each other. Ian tells Rune basically that there's a curse on him from Cressida and all that stuff. And I literally go, Rune must be the missing heir because either it's Cressida put a curse on him to not be with anyone else in her bloodline or someone that means something to him specifically. So I just started picking up on things that I was hoping it'd be someone else to at least make it more interesting. But when it ended up being her, I said, okay, part one, I figured that out. At first I questioned
Yeah.
it. And then as we got more info, I go, okay, this is totally the thing. This is
Yeah.
it. It was pretty,
The,
yeah. It was,
the air one, yeah, I guessed that early on too. And I was
yeah.
like, okay, well, it's either going to be Rune or it's going to be Seraphine.
Right.
But then I'm like, Seraphine's too old
Yeah.
because she used to hang out with the grandma. And I was like, I just don't think it would work. But then I was like, well, maybe somehow. And like, that's why she's this young thing. But I'm like, no, it has to be Rune. Um, Spoiler to the end of the book. Still don't know why they couldn't find her. Why she wasn't, the Sibyls couldn't see, like what that protection was on her, unless it was something like that thing Seraphine was like, when I looked at you, something clicked inside of me.
I think,
And I'm like, did you put something on her? She didn't actually tell us on the page.
oh,
She
but
gave her a protection.
I'm assuming that because Seraphine was trying to basically wrong a right with her, the whole entire book for her was just her fuck up from earlier on with the Rosebloods. My assumption is she put something on Rune to realize of I can't have you be taken by this family. I've seen too many of this happen because I think she was working for that family, I believe.
Yeah, she's
and
like the
she stole
midwife
her
or
away.
something.
Yeah, so I'm assuming she put something on her and basically called it a
Yeah.
day. But yeah, there was nothing written in detail of what exactly it was that she did.
Yeah, I know that comes up in part 2, so I'll save my comments on that for when we get
Yeah.
there. But like,
Yeah.
come on, she could have been able to figure this out way earlier too.
Yeah.
The other thing that drove me freaking nuts was okay. Later, she goes back down to investigate the vessel area, and William pops up, like,
Shocker.
and they're like, it's like written to like make it seem like he's gonna try and have sex with her against her
Yeah.
consent. But then when he's like, I know who you are, Crimson Moth, like, da da da. And then Gideon ends up being in there. She's like, how did she not sense him? If she clearly could sense William, I mean, granted, she heard the door open, but
Yeah.
whatever, to each their own. And then Gideon's like, okay, Rune, go back to the cabin. I'll take care of this. Again, where's his second brain cell? You are the captain of this freaking army. Did you really think that she was going to listen to you?
No.
Because again, all he talks about is like how she's this manipulative person. She'll do whatever to save herself. It's all
Right.
about her. Do you think she's gonna be like, okay, yeah, I know this guy was about to kill me, so I'm gonna let the two of you who are definitely both trying to kill me just chat amongst yourself and I'll leave. I'm like, okay, he must know that she's sitting outside. And then goes on to tell his entire plan to William about how he actually is going to betray Rune, this whole thing. And I was like, oh, this is like not like he really thinks she listened to him.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, maybe he's just playing it up and he's pretending, acting as if she did. But as the book went on, I was like, he really did not realize that she just stood outside. They walked by her.
I don't know
Like they
how
just
anyone.
casually strolled together.
Yeah.
That part, I feel like you had to like, I don't know. I don't even know what the right way to describe it is, but those are the parts that made me be like, I cannot rate this a 4 or
Yeah.
anything above a 4 because I'm like, there are too many things that it's just like the way you've described this character, the role this character plays in this bigger political climate, they would be smarter than this.
I
And
would
I
have.
cannot suspend
Yeah.
disbelief that this is actually how they're acting.
Agreed. I would have rather if it was a you need to leave and then we don't find out anything of his conversation with William. It's basically just a he's gone. We assume he's dead and then he comes back towards the end or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't give me every piece of information. Make me wonder what happened or what agreement did they come to. It was just I think there was too many details on the page, which I would have rather had less so that I had to question things instead of this was just a oh I know every detail. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no shocker in terms of their plans here. I think everything was written out so you knew what was happening down the line. So
Yeah. And then it was just frustrating because you, as the reader, knew all these things, but Rune wasn't letting him know that she knew.
right.
And then he's just operating under this, oh, she's so dumb. She has no clue. I'm like, she literally evaded you guys the entire first book. You were dating her
Yeah.
essentially and had no clue. Like,
Right.
and that's where I was getting annoyed because I was just like, I hate when authors like the backgrounds they give the characters. You would think that they should be at a certain intelligence level, and then they write them so dumb on the paper to serve
Yeah.
the plot. When it's like, no, they could actually be as intelligent as they should be for what you've written them as their background. You just need to be more creative with your plot. And
Yeah.
that was what was annoying me is she was just dumbing things down to make it that part easier for her.
Yeah. I'm going to sound crazy, but perfect way of the intelligence level is really high and you didn't find things out until when it happened was Throne of Glass series. That entire series was things that Aelin was doing and you found out 2 books later of just a this is what you did. Oh, okay, I totally see what you're doing here. I didn't like that I was left out, but I can understand where you came from. Totally fine. There were you know what I mean? You keep them at that and there's still a plot there that happens. Like I said, there were so many things that we did not need on the page and we could have kept them at that level that they were in book 1 of ooh, I don't know who she is, but I'm not going to give all of my, I'm not going to put all my eggs into one basket. We'll figure this out type thing. I would have liked not having,
Yeah.
the detail. It just
No,
is
I
weird.
agree. Because, yeah, it just felt like it dumbed the characters down. And I
Yeah.
was just, and it made me frustrated with them. Because I was just like, if you're the captain of this army and you can't think this other option that feels very obvious,
Yeah.
then how am I supposed to believe that you guys actually have a chance to beat Cressida and her army? If
Yeah.
you can't, you're the leader and you can't figure this out.
And the fact that you've been a leader for many years now, you were
Mhm.
taken under the wing by the good commander and literally have killed a bunch of witches. Where is that
Yeah.
person?
And he
Where's this
trained all these
Gideon?
people. So I'm like,
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
That part drove me absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, he has to have known. And he was just, no, he
No.
had no clue that she overheard.
None. It was weird. The whole thing was just weird.
Yeah, that part, I don't know. Like, all right. So I think that covers most of part one. So if you want to give us a little summary of part two,
Yeah.
then we can chat about that. Also, I don't think this book needed to have parts, let me just say. I
I was
don't
really
understand the
confused.
point.
So when I got to part two, I thought that was it. And then there was a part three. I go, wait, I did not look at the, list ahead of time, but I did not think it needed it as
It was so
much.
random. Yeah.
I think the way, and this is just my assumption, so take it with a grain of salt, but it definitely was a what part were they in and what was the little bit of conflict that they were dealing with at that moment was probably the parts. But to your
Yeah.
point, it could have easily just been just read it through and fine. So who knows? But in the second part, we are now back at the New Republic. So Rune is able to get through without the witch sniffing dogs, bloodhounds, whatever they are, basically. They don't come to the ship because Gideon had made that agreement with William to not have them come. We're in more of the trying to get the Sybil and going through that situation before Cressida basically gets to her because she'll use her and try to find the heir. And we also have a bunch of stuff where basically Cressida finally shows up at this point to the New Republic because she was on her way as well. And we have the start of, I guess, the war, basically, of the witches trying to take back the New Republic at this point. So that's kind of what happens in this one. We kind of shift from being off the boat to the chaos of the beginning of the war.
And Soren, Prince Soren, has given the army because
Yeah.
he, learns that he thinks his Rune has been kidnapped.
Yeah.
And he's throwing everything he has at the New Republic to get his kidnapped, or so he thinks, fiance back, which is why Cressida is coming back. This whole part, honestly, the thing with the Sybil, really just another thing where I'm like, felt obvious that Rune was going to be betrayed by her.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I was a little surprised that they were using a child to control her, but I mean, she needed something to be like why she was willing to give all these people up.
Yeah.
But I just feel like there's a lot of things that they did, which I understand why they did them, but from the author's side, I'm like, this scene did nothing to advance the book. Gideon decides he's going to rescue her so that she can find out who this heir is, because their plan is to go and kill this Roseblood heir so that that like thwarts all of Cressida's plans. And they save her, him and Rune. So it's like, again, you're not really making yourself look good because you're just over here running things with her. They save her, and then they immediately both ask her to do stuff for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, why would she want to do that? Like, she doesn't owe you guys anything. She's been tortured since the end of book one or whenever she got captured.
Yeah.
And then, like, Rune seems shocked when later, this is jumping ahead, they finally escape and they're on the boat and they get back to Umbria. And Rune's like, I'm just going to jump off and go grab something quick. And then the girl's like, I'm leaving. And she takes the boat and leaves. And I'm like, so we wasted time with that whole escape plan where Gideon had to like distract and give them a diversion so they could get to the harbor, get on the boat, finding the food,
Yeah.
just for Rune to have to go back to where she started.
Yeah, it was really weird because the rescuing of the child, I thought, was probably the only piece that was interesting to the story because Gideon, at that point, I think was really realizing that he was not letting Rune die. He was going to try and do as much as possible to get her out of here because he knew that Cressida was going to use her because he knew, I think at some point in this part that he finds out that she is the heir, and Rune still doesn't know yet, but he was really trying to help out. So I felt like like I said, helping out the Sybil and getting her child was a huge piece because also it showed Rune that, he's willing to do other things for everyone else. But this is where I kept getting frustrated at this point too, because he kept getting captured or Rune kept getting captured. So it was okay, Gideon would get captured and then Rune would have to go save him. And then she gets on the boat and all of that stuff. And then, oh no, I need to get back and everything. I think it was trying to use those events as a way for them to realize that they still loved each other and that they didn't want to live without the other and they needed to save the other. It wasn't a truce just to get to the next phase. It was, oh no, I don't want to be without this person. So that's where I started getting frustrated, was just, okay, I don't think we need this. Oh, he's in custody again. Oh, he's with Noah again. And Noah's going to get mad at him because how dare he be a witch sympathizer at this point? And no, okay, finally at this point, we're going to kill you off because of how many times you've helped out. It's just.
Yeah. It also lost the dramatic effect. When you're being captured every third chapter, it's like he's captured. Now she's getting captured.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, you've been captured 4 times already and you've gotten
Yeah.
out. I don't think this is the time you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like you're probably gonna get saved. It was just
Yeah.
getting so frustrating. And I will say, because you had mentioned it, the Sybil did help in one regard. Rune's ask of her was,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I need to do this spell, but we need 2 willing witches to do it. So they were
Yeah.
trying to do like a locating spell
Yeah.
to find this heir because Rune was going to try and take this heir somewhere else. They do it. They're at this like ancient area. This is how Gideon finds out because he sees Rune basically turn to like lights, like she's like glowing.
Yeah.
And she walks into the circle and she lays on something like a stone. And he realizes, oh shit, she's the heir.
Mm-hmm.
So there goes my plan to kill the heir because I would be killing her. So that plan goes off the table. Does he tell her this? No. Does he say, hey, we're aborting that plan? No. More miscommunication. But this is again, now Rune showing that she doesn't have 2 brain cells to rub together. She wakes up laying on this stone in the middle of the ring and the smoke is kind of gone or whatever. So she's immediately like, oh, the spell must have failed. But has no recollection of how she ended up on this stone because
Yeah.
she was in a cave. She wakes up soaking wet. I'm sorry, if you sleptwalked and you landed on a stone and you were getting poured on, I think you would wake up and like. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
it literally is supposed to bring the person to you. It's a locating spell. So that person was going to land on the stone. You wake up on the stone in the middle of this like ancient spell you did. It didn't even cross your mind. Oh shit, maybe I'm there.
Yeah. I also was
Like you
really,
were adopted.
right. And
It wasn't like she was told she was her grandma, like was blood related. She knew she was adopted.
yeah,
And
because
she
her
was
parents
like
had just died in
died in a
a ship or
yeah.
something like that. Yeah. It was, what was interesting to me too was that whole piece. I don't know why, but I figured the summoning spell, one of them would have had to stay up so that if the person ever came, it was a immediate grab them. Because if you think about
Yeah, they
it,
all just fell asleep.
they all just fell asleep. And Rune's just in the middle of the stone, the middle of the circle. And I don't even know if the Sybil realizes that she was the heir because she wakes up and goes, "Oh, have trouble sleeping or a nightmare or
Yeah.
something like that." I go, what do you think that she was doing? Just wants to sit in the middle and be upset that it didn't work or something? I was so confused.
Soaking wet.
And I didn't know, does the person, are they forced in the circle and they can't leave the summoning situation? You know what I mean? Are they trapped in it? There were so many things they could have done with it of a, it wakes someone up, whatever it was. But yeah, that was just interesting because I go, okay, what are we doing with this piece of information? And that's why, at first, I thought that's why the Sybil pieced out on her when she brought Rune back to Umbria. Was just, okay, bye. You're really the heir. I'm not getting involved in this. I want to save my child. But
that would have made more sense. But then she just throws her, oh, I found this jewelry box and it had a note from Gideon. And it turns out the note was from book 1.
yeah,
And she's like, you should probably go save him. And I'm like, how big is this boat that you were rummaging through finding a jewelry box without her noticing?
yeah, I have no idea. There was a lot of pieces.
You had to suspend a lot of disbelief in this book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because she did comment it was a smaller sailboat that she could sail herself. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. This part too, which was interesting. I didn't write any notes on it because it doesn't really need a note. But when Rune is back in Umbria, she ends up going back to the house.
When she gets left at the boat.
Right.
Yeah.
So she ends up, okay, I might as well make myself useful and try to find spells to get back because I obviously need to go save him because he probably got captured at this point.
Yeah. And I think she's also looking for that curse that he has.
Yeah. Yeah. She was trying to see if she could fix it. And then she obviously goes into Cressida's area and then has to hide. And Cressida can easily find her because, one, she's a more powerful witch. She's been around for a lot longer. She could obviously see you hidden behind the curtain. So that was interesting too. But the biggest piece here, I would have, there were parts that I think could have been removed completely, but this part was probably the biggest piece that was important to the rest of the book, was when Cressida literally traps Rune into a circle and whips her to the point that she almost dies. And
Yeah.
Seraphine basically had to come in and say, you can't kill her. Is the heir. So as much as you hate her, you need her alive until you can, kill her to summon your sisters. But that was, in my opinion, the big piece.
Yeah, that was definitely necessary.
But like everything else, I think could have been modified a bit to to get to that point. So it's just,
Yeah. She ends up finding the spell. She figures out that Cressida cursed Gideon. He can't be with his true love. So then now
yeah,
she figures out, oh shit, he actually loves me. Like,
right, yeah. Couldn't tell
we
that
all knew
before.
this.
Yeah,
We all knew this.
yeah,
Uh, yeah. And then she, is whipped and gets back on the boat to go with them to the New Republic. And she finds out she's been out for days. I will say, though, it's funny because I feel like Rune only did like 3 spells the whole book:
yeah,
Ghostwalker, Torch, and the blood replenishing one she does at the end. But
yeah.
Ghostwalker was like her only thing she did.
And she
And it
created
was
herself too. So it's
it was
okay.
so funny though when she did it on the second time to go into Cressida's area. And it's like, it did not work the first time you did it because Cressida could sense that they had used it when she first was rescuing Gideon at the beginning,
Yeah.
after he had been caught for trying to kill Rune, and he gets taken to be Cressida's prisoner, and Rune sets him free. And I'm like, so you knew she sensed you in the first time, so you're like, I'm going to try it again and hope for.
Yeah. It
And
was
again,
really
it
weird.
failed.
Yeah. The only thing that was interesting too, when she obviously is in there getting tortured to death, she does her own counter spell against Cressida to basically remove the curse on Gideon. But I want to say that she created that herself. I don't think that was in a book because
It was.
it was in a book. Okay, then I totally missed that part because I go, oh, that would have been nice to highlight that she did something. But oh no, never mind. It was the sacrifice that she had to do by the
The
true love or
everlasting.
something. Yeah. Okay, never mind. Take
Hmm.
back everything I just said.
The one where he gets like that crazy protection at the end, that one, I don't know
I think
how
that was part of the sacrifice
if that
part,
was
but it
in.
wasn't mentioned.
No. And she said she drew the things while she was there. So it must have been in that book. And I don't know.
But
Some things weren't
also,
clear.
he's
I also thought it
able
was
to,
only going to protect him from Cressida. And then all of
not
a sudden,
everyone.
the army starts shooting at him and he just gets like a dome. The waterfall just comes right over him. I was
But
like,
can
I
we
thought it
talk
was.
about the fact that he's still shot in the rest of, towards the, I think the beginning of part 3, he gets shot. So her thing did not protect him always. So I don't
So it
know,
must have
was
been
it
after
a,
she did the
she
sacrifice
dies or
because it was
something?
after she died.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was a, once I
They
fully
needed like
protect
her
you.
blood to like finish
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
right.
Craziness.
Just had to
Because
assume
she does
there.
put one in his jacket when they go on that rescue mission for the baby. But
Yeah.
yeah, she must have needed her blood to have like the longer one. But yeah, then we make our trek back to Umbria back to the New Republic.
Mm-hmm.
So she's just back where she started, except now she has like a whipped back.
Yeah, and she's super scared of Cressida because
And we've lost
obviously,
the sailboat.
right.
Yeah.
So she's just now chilling, and there, Cressida starts doing the daily tortures or killings of people who are traitors and basically anyone
Yeah.
in the blood guard. And this is where we find out about Harrow and Juniper, because I know that we
Hmm.
get the little hint earlier on when Gideon's talking to Harrow and everything, but this is when Juniper says you need to save her and all of that. Because I think, yeah, because Harrow was sold to Juniper's family.
Yeah, and they
Yes,
fell in love.
yeah. So we get that information in this one too. So it's interesting. One thing I didn't mention that I wanted to mention and I forgot, but the beginning of part 2 had a part of when Queen Althea was in power, And what was interesting, I don't understand why she is valuable to the story yet. That was the only question I had the entire time, was why are we getting a
Yeah, like little excerpts or journal
excerpt?
entries or something. I don't even know what they
Right.
were.
And I started questioning, was she hiding the heir? Like, what was her
Hmm.
reasoning here? And at one point, I thought Seraphine might have been the queen because I didn't
Yeah,
understand.
that would have been a good guess.
Right. I didn't understand what was going on. But the whole time, I just kept waiting for something to happen in part two, but then nothing did. So I didn't
Hmm.
understand why we got that piece of information in part two. I was really confused there, but we end up finding about more of it, obviously, in part three and towards the end. But
Yeah. Okay.
I,
Should we move into part three? I don't
yeah,
have anything else for part two.
no, the only thing that I had that kind of jumps into part three was Seraphine can't move on until she completes her task, which I think perfectly
Oh
sets
yeah,
up
that's
the,
good foreshadowing.
yeah,
I didn't
but
even think of that at the end.
yeah, but that's the only part that then ties in really well into part three, and then you can kind of figure out stuff here. But
Hmm.
so part three slash epilogue is kind of what I put
Hmm.
this one, is where it's kind of the end of the New Republic section where they are in there, but they are fleeing from the castle or wherever the good
Winter
commander.
Sea.
Yeah. So they're piecing out from there and trying to get away because at this point, Rune is terrified of Cressida and does not want to be in her area whatsoever. I mean, after the near death situation, I'm not shocked there either. But then we find out more of, who's on their side, who wants to help out with the fight. They don't want to go down, all of that stuff. And then obviously we get to the ending fight and final scenes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what this one, it's the build up towards the end. But this one also started with another quote about Queen Althea and her passing away and them doing a funeral for her and all of that stuff. So this is another part where I was trying to figure out what her value was to the story and where she kind of came in into play. And I apologize, this I had skipped. I thought Harrow was taken to be tortured in part two, but she actually is the beginning of part three, so a little bit off. But
Oh, that's fine.
this is when that part happens. So
Yeah, this is like when Rune goes back to Winter Sea and she's breaking into her casting room. She's
yeah,
trying to get stuff, even though she was told that that's where Noah was. He had like taken it over.
yeah,
Uh, Gideon's there because he's trying to get back in with the army,
mm-hmm.
and or he's a prisoner at this point.
Yeah,
And then him and Rune end up together, and like Rune's about to be shot in the back. Gideon's being taken somewhere to be executed, and then Felix gives him the key, and then Layla ends up giving them a head start and doesn't end up killing Rune. Like the people in the army, wishy washy. I could not tell.
very.
Like Layla's pissed at Gideon. Why are you defending her? Why are you on her side? Then Layla's set to kill Rune. I'm gonna let her run away. Like none of them can make up their mind on like what side they wanted to be on.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah, this is when they start running through the forest and
yeah,
Gideon's almost dead. She
yeah.
does the blood replenishing, and then they end up at that other house that I think is empty, and it ends up having Bart, I think was his name.
Bart and
And
Antonio.
yeah,
Yeah,
and they become like a little group there.
little clan. Yeah, and I thought
Yeah.
this was very much and I think they even said it too, was well, this is going to be the end. We want to be together. We might as well go out with a
Mm.
bang type thing. Was very much their vibe for this house. Was just, if anyone's coming to hang out with us, it's going to be pretty much our last hurrah because we don't know if we're going to live to see tomorrow. It was, that was the whole
Yeah.
vibe of this place. And I said, okay,
Yeah.
I'm here for it, but let's see what happens.
And finding out that Antonio was an acolyte
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, so this is clearly going to have something to do with the ancients.
Yeah.
And then he tells her the story about wisdom and the queen.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I've never heard that story and I know all of them. Okay, so that's exactly what's happening here.
Yeah.
And then, while I did not connect the dots that Seraphine was wisdom, when she does later show up, he looks at her, she looks at him, and he gives her a little look and she gives a nod.
Yeah.
I caught that, but I was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Um, and then made sense at the end when we find out Seraphine is wisdom, and this is like her final task, so she can move on. Is
Yeah.
taking
I
Cressida down.
honestly thought that she was, I said was Queen Althea's spirit in another
Mm,
character because there had to be something going on with Seraphine. The fact that there was that silent conversation. I said, okay, who is this queen and why is she here? But I didn't realize it was going to be wisdom being part of it because they didn't really give us a crazy amount in the who wisdom was at that point. It was all
yeah.
about the queen until Antonio tells the whole story and we say, oh, okay, this kind of could
Yeah, like
lead
when
us
he
to a
he
place.
says like, "Oh, Wisdom decided to live as a human
Mm-hmm.
mortal until
Yeah.
like her task." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
So it makes sense like why she doesn't age, and
Yeah.
I mean it made sense. I didn't connect it right in that moment, but it made sense like once we got the reveal. And I will say that was the only thing that was a little shocking,
Mm-hmm.
but not like, "Oh my god, never saw that coming." It was just like, "Oh, okay, I like that."
Agreed.
One of the only things. And I
Yeah.
have to say this whole time when they're at the house, this like big chunk of part 3 post like Cressida beating Rune and like pre her finally coming on board, she was the most infuriating character to read about. I understand she's definitely traumatized by what happened
Mm-hmm.
to her, but refused to tell anyone, refused to show the scars, didn't want to address it, was such a shell of herself. And I was like, this isn't even enjoyable to read.
I know.
She had just given up. And then it was kind of annoying me that Gideon was just letting her give up. He was just like, okay, fine. Yeah, you can go to the train. You can leave. It's fine. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, we all know that neither of you are going to live in different parts of the world knowing that the other one's still alive. So it's just like, it was so annoying how she just was unwilling to see any other option for herself. And it's like, you were this like strong character, and
Yeah.
she's just like, no, there's only two options: either your army goes into control and I'm dead, or Cressida takes over and you're dead. There's no world where we both live. And he was like, we could create like a new government. There's probably enough people that hate it either
Yeah.
way that we could like start an uprising. No, we can't do that.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
This is where Gideon starts to become the old Gideon in my opinion, where
Yes,
don't get me wrong, he still has some moments that are just, oh my god, what are you doing? Like letting
much
her
more
go.
enjoyable to read about though
But
here.
much more enjoyable to read because he kind of took the reins and said, okay, no, you know what? There are other people who are interested in a world without these two powers that be. We need to make our own so that people can, be united and there can be anyone here and we don't really care. We're not going to do slaughterings just because, you're a witch or you're a witch sympathizer, all that stuff. So this is where I started to like him more in the book. Everyone else was kind of annoying. And I can understand the pain and going through all of that for Rune, but it was really tough because if we had started off the whole book with her dealing with that and that was the beginning of the second book, I could have understood if she slowly got to this point, but it was the whole part 3 was just nope, I'm not doing anything. Every single one of her chapters was just I am defeated, and it just felt like we were trying to get to somewhere, and then finally when they go to the train is when we get something out of her, and it literally took Gideon getting in custody again and almost getting killed. All it took was him to get captured again and her just to happen to look to realize I need to do this. But what I will say this, and I'm going to sound bad, but what was really confusing to me is in her fear, she did not take into consideration that maybe the summoning spell didn't work when she did it. But why would it not work when Cressida did it? Like at this point, she knows that she is the missing heir.
Mm-hmm.
If Cressida can do the summoning spell, she's a more powerful witch. She can do a bunch of other things. What is stopping her from finding you anyways, wherever you go? Was more my confusion. Is I understand you
Yeah.
don't want to fight her, but why are you running when she can easily keep bringing the fight to you? Was more of where I started getting confused and frustrated. I can understand the fear and all of that and the trauma, but the whole I'm gonna leave. Well, she could find you, so I don't know what to tell you. There's
No,
gonna
that's
be
a
a
really
way.
good that's a good point. I didn't even think of that. It knows you're the heir. And like, yeah,
Yeah,
you could run to a different area of the world that might take her a while to find you, but yeah, she can easily just do that spell that would just bring you there.
right. Because even
Yeah.
with the spell that was protecting her from the Sybil, the summoning spell still worked. It wasn't like the summoning spell did not work and we didn't find out till the end. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I could
Yeah,
understand
like
if,
clearly, and she must have connected that it worked because she knows that she's the heir at this point. That was also really
right.
annoying too when She's so defeated. They're eating the breakfast. Other people have joined. They are all kind of getting on board with like, yeah, we're going to be like this new third group that's coming up.
Yeah.
And she just leaves the breakfast table to go to the hot springs. And she's like, okay, now I'm going to run away to the train. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't want anyone to question you. You don't want to talk about it. But like, you're being really dramatic and really obvious that something's bothering you. Like, you're
Yeah.
mad that people, I hate that. Like, you're mad that people are checking in on you, but like you've made it so it's so awkward if someone didn't because you've just like up and left. Also, at this
Yeah.
point, Gideon has known she's the heir. He then finds out that Rune knows that she's the heir. So it's like you both know this information, you still haven't talked about it.
Right.
Irritating.
Yeah.
But the whole train scene is another situation where, to me, I'm just like, what was the point of this? Could we have done this in any other manner? Because I'm like, this is extra pages we added here.
Mm-hmm.
She goes to the train. Again, the maid has told her the trains are about to be closed. They're shutting down. Get me on the last one. She clearly doesn't think through that they're going to have the dogs there. They're going to have the army there.
Yeah.
And the dogs, even if she's like illusioned, the dogs can still smell the magic. So I'm like, you didn't take any of this into account. Gideon follows her to make sure she gets on the train safely because they decide they're going to go separate ways. He does that huge diversion, gets the leash tied around him, has the guards questioning him, whatever. He gets captured by the witch. All so she can get on this train so she can go live her new life as she wants to live.
Yeah.
So he does all of this for her. He's captured by the witch, about to be taken in to see Cressida. 3 seconds later, Rune has gotten off the train and she's there to save him because she saw him, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you could have saved all of this by just staying with the group and figuring it out. Like, it was just, or like, why couldn't they have just seen each other at the train
You
and her
know,
have that moment there, like, oh yeah, actually, I don't want to do this. Why did we have to go through the thing of him getting captured again? Like you said, it was just
yeah.
constant capturing.
Yeah.
Her getting on the train, having to jump off the train, having to run. We could have done this so much easier and avoided another capture situation.
Yeah, and you know what's funny too is even if they wanted to have it where it still was a I'm going on the train, it could have been that diversion, but it could have been where she didn't make it on the train because she saw him getting captured, and then they caused chaos right then and there and have
Oh,
to.
that would have been perfect.
That would have been a nice, okay, we've removed 2 chapters. We're just getting into the chaos of it, and then we're fleeing back home because we need to figure out what's going on. I
Yeah.
would have been totally fine with that. I think that there had to be, I don't know, because they end up on that other train that brings them back. But
Yeah, and
there
they ended
had
up
to be a
hooking
moment for
up.
them. Yeah, there had to be a moment. So was that it? Like, was that the only
Yeah, I'm thinking
reason?
it's, but it's like, so we had to read a chapter of her looking at herself in the window and telling us that illusions don't work in window reflections. Then she has to go back to him. Then we
Yeah.
get the whole chapter of them jumping the train cars and finding a sleeper cart so they could have
Yeah.
sex. And he wanted to know what her dream was about and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
honestly, at that point, like, I didn't feel the need for a spice scene at
No.
all in the book because it was so enemies to lovers. Like, I would have been fine if that was like the epilogue.
Oh, yeah. It would have been
Because
fine
it
with
just like
none of
felt
it.
like, okay, so you guys are just taking this casual train ride to the next station, and then
Yeah.
like, how are you getting back? Because it seemed like it was pretty far the next station. Because he was like, oh, the guards won't even catch up to her from on horseback. It's so far away. Just for them to go back, I just felt like that's what we kept doing. She would go somewhere because she was like throwing in the towel, and then she 3 seconds later would end up right back where she was.
Yeah.
She
Yep.
just couldn't make it. That scene drove me up the wall. And
Yeah.
then we get back, and that's when Abby and all them show up.
So this is
And I'm like, how the hell did you know what house they were at? This house was supposed to be like their secret hideout, and everyone seemed to find it no problem.
okay. So that was my thing because I know that Bart was trying to get people who were sympathizers, or I wouldn't even say sympathizers, more people who just didn't care and just wanted to live their life without any issues
Yeah.
going on. And he was trying to find people. And I know at this point they also had Harrow and Juniper go back to Cressida to try and get information on what Cressida was doing, which of course she
Where
ends up.
the sisters were buried.
Right. So there were people who were trying to find others, but it was really confusing because how do you know who to trust? Because they still didn't. Yes, that William was the spy, but Abby could have easily had been in on that and just had used him to get to Rune. There were so many other things, and it just felt a little bit too rushed to get an army of their own. Do you know what I mean? I understood
Yeah.
Harrow. I understood Juniper because they had started seeing the writing on the wall. They didn't really like it, all of that stuff. Seraphine was going to come regardless, but there was just some people that I just didn't think that needed to be there. Even
Yeah.
Layla, I didn't know why she needed to be there. It was kind of a,
Yeah,
they
because I
ended
had
up.
no clue what she actually thought and felt.
No, and
I
I
think she
think
was
she
just
was
annoyed that her brother left her in that basement.
right, exactly. And she was more upset that her dad died from the
Yeah.
witches. I can understand that, but at the end of the day, I didn't understand it. So yeah, there was just like a huge kumbaya. They
Yeah.
were all dancing. They were having a party.
Then,
They
like,
were
yeah, they
just.
threw a whole party. I was like, are there other things we should be
It
doing?
really was a last. We're probably gonna die tomorrow. Nice knowing you all. Let's just get drunk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was very much this.
It was interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was very odd. And then obviously we jump into the fact that we get a note or whatever from Harrow saying that Cressida has the bodies here. I don't understand why it would be coming from Harrow. I'm just going to start saying this. I don't know why it didn't come from Juniper because she would have been the one who talked to Cressida anyways. If Harrow, I know
Yep.
that because Harrow didn't
I thought
trust
the same
Juniper
thing.
enough. So I didn't
I thought the
understand.
exact same thing.
And then they just, oh, we're trapped.
And
This is a
but he makes
trap.
that thing. Gideon internally makes a comment to himself, like, "Oh, I thought she would have given us a what's the status on you guys or something." Like, this is
Right.
a very short note from her. Okay, so you questioned the note, but not enough to even consider the fact that you're being set up for a trap.
Yeah.
Why is she giving you 4 days warning? Hey, this is, and she's gonna, here's that where they are, and she's moving them on this day.
Right.
And even if it wasn't a trap, they should have still prepared as if it was going to be one, just
Agreed.
in case. And when they got there, it seemed like the whole crew wasn't even with them altogether.
No, because they did
And
other things.
they commented that Gideon was the only one that had a pistol.
Yeah.
So you came with one gun.
Yeah.
Like, you had to assume that that area, even if Cressida didn't show up, it was still going to have guards. She needed those bodies. Like, why wouldn't she have someone protect? There was just little things where I'm like, Gideon, as the captain of an army, wouldn't you have, like, I'm thinking war strategy. Wouldn't you guys have put guards and like security almost around things that are important, even if
Yeah.
you're not going to do anything? You just have someone watching it.
Right. Exactly.
And
Or
it's like it didn't even cross their minds.
yeah, and this was the only person, the two people that I think came prepared was Seraphine and Antonio because they knew that they were gonna have to
They knew
resurrect.
the spell. Yeah.
Right, because he started looking of, oh, let me look at the spell that you're. Why would this
Yeah.
be so important and stuff like that? Even though they totally had a secret conversation of this is probably what's gonna
100%.
happen and we're gonna have to do it. But I totally forgot to mention this, but this goes to here. Rune sees the future. And so after she sees that she gets killed, we find out that Gideon is the reason why she ends up getting killed at the end because he is the one who has to kill her so that they can do whatever the rest of the mission is. But how did she not see that either? Because I was trying to figure out if she could see like the Sybil can, or if she could kind of see bits and pieces. That part was confusing to me because we don't get information on if she could see bits of the future type thing. So
Yeah.
it was weird because wouldn't she have seen that she was going to die at this place and maybe she came prepared in a way for everyone else to be safe? Do you know what I mean? Like that was where I was trying to figure
Yeah.
out of her part of the plan. I don't know.
So she does say something about that where
Okay, then I missed it.
she thought the place where she was going to be killed was a different place because she was getting wet. So I think she thought it was raining, but then actually it's from the waterfall thing that they have there was spraying on her. And so
Okay.
she's like, oh, so in that vision, like, it wasn't raining. This is where I am. I'm being sprayed by this. And I think that's why she knew she had to do that. But again, like, you saw that. You also saw the kids. So, like, shouldn't she have known she was going to be resurrected?
I don't know, unless she just saw maybe a future that she wasn't in it and just said, Gideon, go live your life. You know what I mean? I'm going to sacrifice myself so you can go live.
Yeah.
I have no
But she
idea.
knew that she was the kid's mom because when she saw her window reflection, she's like, oh, I've seen these features in three other people, the
Okay,
three
I was trying to
kids.
figure out what that was.
Yeah,
Okay.
she says that. That's later when they come back from the train and she's like, you asked
Forgive
me if I
me.
want
Yep.
kids. Yeah, I want three. I want to get
Okay.
married to you. And she says she saw the reflection. She knew that those kids were hers and Gideon. So it's like,
Okay. I was trying to figure out
but
what
again,
that
we
meant.
don't. we don't know enough about how the Sybils work. Like, do they see a bunch of different paths and it based off of your choices is the future that, or is it like every single thing they see is guaranteed future? Because then it's like, okay, if you see yourself being shot, but you also see yourself having kids,
Something has to happen here.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I was hoping that if that was the train of thought, right? So let's go on that's the path forward. If that was the case, no wonder why she would have Seraphine and Antonio come with her, because Seraphine's another witch who can do the
Mm-hmm.
resurrection spell, could help out all that stuff. And Antonio was, an acolyte and might have some connection to wisdom and all of the other ones as well. So I was trying to figure out if that was the path, then maybe it was Rune's plan to bring those two people with nothing else besides Gideon's one pistol. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we didn't
And
get
she
any of that.
asked,
So
yeah, she asked Antonio because he had a wisdom necklace or something.
I was going to say,
And she
wasn't
said,
he
are,
sworn to it? I want to say that
yeah,
that's
are
what it
you
was or something.
consecrated to wisdom? And he said,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, it just
Mm-hmm.
like was all working too perfectly.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. And Gideon kind of killed her quickly. Like he didn't put up much of a fight.
I would have thought she would have told him, you have to do this to be able to protect everyone else. But I guess the only thing is he knew that he had to get rid of the heir so that Cressida could be stopped anyway. So I guess he just said, all right, fine, goodbye.
Yeah. Well,
There
she
was
was like begging
nothing.
him. She was like, I'd rather you kill me than her.
Yeah.
And so do this. Like, so I got it. But like,
Yeah.
she didn't really have to like ask too many times before he just, and then afterwards he was like, what did I do? What did I do?
Right.
Um, and then that's when he has like that crazy protection thing going on where like water's going around him. He's like a dome around him essentially.
Yeah.
So he's just then starts going crazy with the killing of people,
Yeah.
and they end up doing the resurrection spell because since Cressida was also related to Rune, they could use her blood
Yeah.
to
Which
resurrect.
I'm going to say it felt anticlimactic, the ending, a bit to me, because I was really hoping there would have been more of a battle with Rune and then her realizing, I can't do anything. I do need to die. Gideon, you need to kill
Oh
me.
yeah,
Do
no,
you know what I mean?
she died right at the
It was
beginning.
just I'm going to peace
She
out.
didn't
Have a
even
nice
fight.
day. Yeah. She goes, hope you don't die. Hope my
Yeah.
resurrect, hopefully my spell to protect you works because I'm out of here.
Oh yeah, and we found out that Harrow had set a trap for them because she had to choose them or Juniper. So then it was like, oh,
Yeah.
so you actually do still have feelings, like these strong feelings for her outside of hate.
Yeah.
Again, everyone was flip flopping the whole book. And then
Yeah.
Rune comes back and Seraphine, poof,
Just,
turns to
okay.
like light
I
and
can go
leaves.
back home now with my sisters. Bye.
Yeah. And then we very quickly jump into the epilogue.
Yeah, which I expected the epilogue to be either way far down the line.
Yeah. It was
Not with
only
the
three
kids.
months.
I didn't think it was going to be with the kids because we already saw that future, so we don't need that information. But I expected more of a, not only a couple months to have gone by. I
Yeah.
expected at least a year or something of the norm or whatever was going on, because 3 months is
Yeah.
not
They
enough to
really,
change things that quick. I'm sorry.
yeah, they instituted a whole new government in three
Yeah.
months, but also we got no closure on what happened to Noah, what happened to the rest of the Blood Army. Did they
Mm-mm.
go on and take them all on, or did they just say like, "Well, we killed Cressida, so we won"?
Yeah, it was kind of because
There was
I
no
think,
conclusion on that.
was it Abby and Layla went to the group and said, "Oh, Gideon is your commander now, and you have to. If you're
Yeah,
with him, great. If you're not, peace out." But there wasn't anything.
yeah, they just like said it. There was no anything
Yeah, there wasn't
official.
anything there. It was just,
We find out they got married because she refers to
yeah,
him as her husband.
yeah,
Uh, the other thing that I was so confused by is we find out that party that they're throwing is for Rune, and she's a counselor. So it's a
yeah,
13-person council. Six are witches, seven are not. And she's one of them for her city and town. And she doesn't really seem to want to be in that position. So she was elected. But I'm like,
yeah.
what is Gideon's role? Is he like the president? I'm so confused. It seemed like he also was in power.
So, because obviously
Or is he just like head of the army? I'm so confused.
so I was questioning if he was head of army only because the commander role is not, Noah's role is not a thing anymore because they now have these 13 people. So my guess is he's just doing what he was before and taking care of the army and saying, okay.
Yeah, I just feel like that was not clear.
Yeah.
And then
Also,
it's just like her not wanting to go to the party, and then he's like, "We have to go to the party. We'll have
yeah.
sex later."
Right, I'm bribing you to sex, so you gotta go.
And then end.
Yeah. Can we just talk about that? I completely skipped over it, but how Rune kills Soren when she had
Oh yeah,
saw
yeah, yeah.
him.
That was good.
Totally forgot about that. I just have to say that was actually another piece that I really enjoyed was Gideon saying, "Who would give you a gun without showing you how to actually use it?" And he kind of shows her how to
Teaches
use it
her.
and everything. And I go, "Oh my god, this would have been an interesting piece if it was highlighted more." It was very much just a, "I don't like you and I'm not going to go with you anymore. Boom, you're dead. Let's
Yeah,
move on."
yeah. That's right when she's coming back on the boat from being
Yeah.
whipped and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah, that was good. I was glad she killed him because
Oh yeah.
he just seemed like the worst.
Yeah, but I also was trying to figure out, does his area now hate them because he still died? But I'm assuming they'll probably blame it on Cressida and say, okay, it was the
Probably.
witches. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, once he died, a bunch of the army was like, "We're not helping you anymore," and they went
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. It was,
Yeah. I don't know.
yeah.
Did you have any more comments for the epilogue slash overall comments that we didn't get to?
I think we went through literally all of my final comments
Yeah,
before because it was just kind
same.
of a, oh, that made sense.
Yeah. Yeah, we hit all mine too. And honestly, the biggest things for me were just the miscommunication trope.
Yeah.
Like things that held it back from being a 5 star, miscommunication and the fact that I felt like the characters were written and acted way dumber
Yeah.
than they actually were. And I felt like it kind of ruined what they were built up to be in the
Hmm.
first book. I just felt like they would have, knowing what their roles were, how they acted in book one, like they would have had more critical thinking skills. And again, I understand why things were done the way they were to advance the plot, but I
Yeah.
think also, like, then that's a sign that you need to be a little more creative with the plot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it could have been a
Not to
little
be
bit
mean, but
different.
like,
Yeah.
and I felt like some chapters were a little fluff in the sense of like the train thing, like we talked about. There could have been another way to accomplish that same goal.
Yeah, I really think and it was we mentioned it too, it's just the loss of, I want to say excitement, but intensity of how many times they were getting into trouble and stuff. And it just, if we narrowed that down by a couple, it would have
Yeah,
been so much better because it would
it would
have,
have had way more drama to it.
right, each piece would have been very crucial to the story instead of just a,
Yeah,
oh, okay, you defended me, but now you're caught again. I guess I got to come back and get you. All right, now I'm
yeah,
caught and now you got to come get me. It was,
yeah.
that's where the back and forth bothered me. And I wish that there wasn't as much. I like the characters. I really do like a duology for the fact that you do feel like you're just getting a bigger part two to you're getting the second
Hmm.
act of the story. And I like that. But this one, I was really bummed that it didn't live up to what I thought it could have. The first
Yeah.
one just set it up so well. I just felt,
I just felt like there was gonna be like more fighting, and it was definitely more just fighting between her and Gideon than
yeah,
actual army fighting and
yeah,
being on the battlefields. I don't know. I thought we were gonna be like more war front.
right.
Uh, so it was just different than what I expected. But I completely agree. This 2 books was perfect for this.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely one would have felt really rushed if she was trying to cram all this in.
Yeah,
2 is the perfect length. Like if this had a third book, I'd be like, I don't know what else you could have done with the story to make it 3. Like this was perfect. I know we always talk about like people just something gets really popular and they change it and they make it longer, they add more
yeah,
books because they want to capitalize. And I'm happy that this author, even the first one, like blew up on TikTok, and she could have been like, "Oh, I'll make this a 4 book series so I can get."
right.
And I'm glad she just kept it to 2
Mm-hmm.
because and focus on like that is what works for the story, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Yep, me too. Because it's
But
just sometimes you don't need the extra. And
no,
it's.
everything got wrapped up, and yeah, if you went for a third, it would have been like just stretching and
Yeah.
just let them do their thing. Honestly, though, I enjoyed it. Like I said, it reminds me of like the Divine Rivals, Ruthless
Yeah.
Vows, where it's not the most life changing book you're ever going to read, but it's enjoyable, and that's what
Yeah.
reading's about. It's about enjoying it. It's really good, I think, if you're trying to dip your toes into fantasy and romantasy, because it's not a lot of things you have to remember.
Yeah.
So it's a great intro book, and they're quick. So I think it serves the purpose that it was written for.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah,
I liked
agreed.
it. I mean, like you said, we read the last one almost a year ago, and we were able to still pick it up. So even though it was a 3.5 star, like we still remembered the characters. We still like it stays with you.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
because it wasn't to the point where I was so confused. I said, oh my
no,
God,
it's
good.
not
I
like
need to look at
intricate. Like
Cliff
you're
Notes.
waiting. Yeah, it's not like, oh, I waited a year for a Throne of Glass book, and I have to like. You're fine. It's just a
Right.
casual series you can pick up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I enjoyed
Yeah.
it. I would recommend it to people,
I would too.
but I
Yeah.
would definitely say the first one leans more fantasy with romance subplot, and this
Yeah.
one feels more romance with a fantasy subplot.
Yeah. I totally flip flopped of a, we need to keep the romance going. And that's what we're going to focus on instead of let it just build
Yeah,
naturally with the rest of the story.
which I think is fine because they laid the
Yeah.
groundwork of what the dynamics were in the first. And we were here for her and Gideon, so it
Yeah.
made sense. But yeah,
Yeah.
just noting it.
Yeah. Also, I this is just a random thought, but so Rune at this point has the scars for her doing the spells because at first she was not doing that. She was purposely trying to hide the fact that she was a witch for literally the whole
Yeah,
entire
she has them
first
like on
book.
her calf.
How do you make a moth? How intricate are you making these freaking cuts? Because in my mind, I'm just trying to picture because she was saying how she had moths all along her calves and everything. I'm trying to figure out what kind of size knife she's using to delicately tattoo
Yeah,
herself basically with
maybe just the
scars.
little tip of the knife.
Right?
Yeah,
I
because
was
it's
trying
a
to figure
special
this
knife
out.
they use. It's a
Yeah.
casting knife. It's
Yeah.
special.
Yeah.
That was a weird element though, that they had to like scar themselves to
Yeah, I
do
mean, I did
magic.
like it because that was the whole reason why they were
It's how you're able to
getting
find them.
captured.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I thought that was really cool, but then they
yeah,
kind of
and
just oh yeah, I have them now.
yeah, they were
Same.
all like up her leg and stuff. So,
Yeah, yeah,
but no, it was good. 3.5
yeah,
stars. I feel confident with that one now.
yeah. I do too. After talking through, I'm like, okay, that was a 3.5. That was mid. I'm good.
Very mid. Yeah.
Very much. So the next episode, we're gonna be going more into the fantasy books, which I seems to be kind of our vibe right now. We're going to be going over Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. So kind of super excited because we've been hearing a lot about that lately. So if you want to hear more about that, other books, anything else that we're talking about, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Booktroverts Pod and join our Fable Book Club to read along with us. But thanks everyone. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.